Yes, it's recording. Hello and welcome back to the Lawn and Garden section, episode number 2. I'm Kristopher from the Midwest Workshop and Garden.
And I am Jason from the YouTube channel under my name, Jason Cyberlick.
Beautiful. And tonight I'm drinking a strawberry wheat from local Barrel 41 Brewing Company in Neenah, made for a Rotary fundraiser. And you?
Nice. A whiskey old-fashioned sweet whiskey from a local place you may have heard of. It's called Costco.
Oh my gosh, what a great dad joke. We're both dads, internet people. We are dads of small children. I have one daughter who's 2.5 and a daughter who's due at the end of April. And Jason, you've got 2 kids too, don't you?
I do. I have a son that's 6 and a daughter that's 3. Both of them turn 7 and 4 here in June and July.
That's really cool. I'm a July birthday, July 11th. What's your July?
24th.
We're gonna pretend that was an instant reaction. That's cool.
It's just I forget which
yeah?
one goes with which day, because one is June 29th and one is July 24th, and so I
Okay.
get the date wrong.
Yeah, that's close enough. I'm sure I'll have those moments too. We both also have dogs. I've got a black lab mix who's about 110 pounds, and you've got a pitty, right?
Yeah, I have like a pit bull lab mix, about 70 pounds. Although the last time we went to the vet, she was quite thick, up at like 80 pounds. So she's dieting. She's at my feet.
Oh, how sweet. Well, that's good. My dog is afraid to come down here the stairs. I don't know if they're extra clippity cloppity for him or if he doesn't like the concrete floor, but he's just like, nope, not in Daddy's workshop.
Has he been down there when like saws are running and stuff too?
No.
Okay.
But
I know
he sits on top of the stairs. So
the second Willow would be anywhere near a saw that turned on, she wouldn't be caught dead within a mile of that room. As much as they're known for being fearsome animals, she's afraid of literally everything that exists on this planet.
Yeah, vacuums. Moose hates vacuums. I think all dogs hate vacuums. But we're not here to talk about vacuums. We're here for our second episode to talk about lawn and garden things. And thank you to everybody who watched or listened to our first one in the background while they were washing dishes or preparing supper or going to the bathroom or whatever else.
The normal place.
Exactly, the normal places. That's what these are for. None of you who watched gave any suggestions in the comments about what we should be talking about. I appreciated the nice things that people said, but let us know what you want us to talk about this time too. So we came up with some ideas, and our main topic tonight is going to be talking about seeds. I have seeds starting on the brain, and I've been thinking about lawns, and I know Jason has a couple things too. So Jason, why don't I put you in the spot and you fire away with like the first question? What do you think we should talk about?
So I think the first thing I wanted to touch on, and you did the video on grow lights and the ones that you use, and I think I wanted to maybe get into a little bit of, so, somebody wants to kind of dip their toes into that.
Yeah.
What's the difference between, let's say, I don't know how much they are, but the $20, $30, $40 Amazon special light that you could get versus a true nice, something that you consider like nice. What's the difference? Do they both work? Do they work to different degrees? What's the story?
Yeah, that's smart. Reliability is, in short, going to be the best question. I think those $20, $30, $40 specials that you can buy on Amazon are going to be using aftermarket products to get them super cheap, and they're all going to be coming from China, which is fine, but still you're going to have in general a lower quality. That being said, you might be getting things that are more LED based, and those prices are going down. So you may see a confluence where like the cost of that technology also dovetails with just cheap crap. So I may be talking out of two ends of my mouth right now, but in general, you definitely get what you pay for in terms of quality of light. And now here's the thing, we're talking about light that people don't get as first-time seed starters. I know I didn't get it until I was trial by fire, but you need to understand the numbers on the tubes and the lights and how that coordinates to actual UV sunlight and what your seeds want to replicate as if they were outside and growing. And in my perfect world that I've cultivated in this back room, which I'm happy to show you into a little bit, I've got T5 grow light tubes, and they're all 6400, 6500 lumens. So 6400K. And that is the solar UV spectrum the best one to emulate the full broad spectrum of light that you get out there. It doesn't skew red, it doesn't skew blue. You want, so, I mean, you want those lights that skew red or blue or somewhere in between for different kinds of plants, but not for seed starting. You want that whole broad spectrum. And I think starters will get lost in the sea of numbers and not knowing what to look for.
Okay, so is because lumen is a measure of brightness, correct? Or is it a measure of? I think I think lumen is a measure of brightness, and then there's like I think the K value that you mentioned is maybe the like whiteness.
Is that what it is? Am I using the wrong term? See?
I'm completely talking out of the side of my mouth too. I have no idea, just beyond like what boxes say on bulbs that are more white versus bulbs that are more like orange.
What is the difference between lumens, kelvins, and watts? Lumens is a measure of total light output, or in other words, the brightness of the bulb. Kelvin is is a measurement used to describe the color and temperature. So yes, the color. So I'm using the wrong word talking about the right thing, because I was talking about colors and full UV spectrum, but I'm calling it lumen. So I'm wrong. It's Kelvin.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction.
So when we're looking for a bulb, the K value you're looking for is around 6400.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's going to be cool white daylight. So the lower the number, the softer the temperature. Like the more yellow the light is going to appear. Good. And that's on earthled.com for what it's worth.
Always cite your sources.
Yeah, that's right. This is true. This is true. Grad school has taught us well. But see, there you have it. I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I'm still getting these like terminology things wrong. And I feel like I know what I'm looking for. It's just a mess if you don't know what you're looking for. And I don't know if that is the same on LEDs or not.
Okay, I think it would be from incandescent to LED, but I think more like is there a brightness impact that you would get maybe if you spend more? Is it all kind of the same? And then okay, so we know we're looking for around 6400 for the color, and that's universal for all seeds starting.
Yes.
Okay. Does it once you get germination, does it matter?
No, you still want that full spectrum.
Okay.
So I've got my seeds on, and somebody asked, I put out a video earlier this week on an AgroBright kind of light that I use as a product review. Anybody can check that out if you want to see that in more detail. Where am I going with this? So I start my lights in the morning, and then I leave them running usually for 12 hours, and I've got a heater on in there. So it's our own personal sauna in the middle of this winter spring transition. I come down there and it's like 78 degrees. It's really nice, humid. It feels so good, especially when you're starting seeds. To have that heat in there is really helpful, because when a seed starts, remember, it doesn't start growing up, it starts growing down. It sends a taproot down, and then the other filaments come off of that, and then you see those first leaves, and not true leaves. I'm not giving some rectal exam. I realize it looks really strange on my picture in the camera. So that heat really helps them grow down into the soil at first. So some people will start seeds with heat mats, which is totally cool. I know not everybody has a concrete closet they can dedicate.
Right.
Heat mats are great. Once you get those first leaves out, though, you can take the heat mats away, because they're not doing any good. And if anything, they're just going to dry the soil out more, which is different from the light, which is what we were talking about. The light, I just keep it on for 12 hours, and I shut it off. I give them a diurnal nocturnal cycle, and away we go.
But you brought up you kind of mentioned a good point in there. Are you controlling? So you're controlling climate as well, not just light?
Yes.
Okay. Temperature that you target is what?
A nice day in Wisconsin in July. I would like mid 70s, upper humid. Like when you walk in there, you don't feel dry. You can breathe really comfortably, but you're not feeling sticky. And the room, that humidity in the room will definitely change depending on watering days. You can really feel it go up when you water, which is funny. But of course, it ebbs and flows. If it were a chart, it would be coursing like this. And that's fine, because that would mimic nature too. A day after rain, you're going to have that humidity, and then it's going to go away, etc.
So do you have like a humidifier in there or anything, or just the natural humidity in the room?
Allow me to take you on a little tour.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Now we're going to be in close quarters here, kids. So let Uncle Chris take you for a walk. I just got done finishing building a bed frame, and I'm
Saw
gonna
that.
have the video up for that in a little bit. Just got the mattress on it today and decked it, so I get to clean out the workshop in preparation for the next project. So
What is the next project?
a headboard for the bed.
Ah, nice.
Thank you for asking. So we come in here and you can see a heater by my
Okay, yep.
things. And that's, let's see, that says 77 on there. And I had, let's see. I mean, poop. Let's see. What can we see here? Does this translate? Yes, it does. So we see 78 degrees, 34% humidity. Yeah, I'd like to be a little bit more humid than that. It's kind of dry in here for seeds. Now, it's
I was gonna say you have the driest basement on earth.
I do have a pretty dry basement, Jason. That's true.
That's insane.
So I know the lighting situation is not the most optimal. I've got this green metal shelving unit that I got put together, and we have 2, 4, 6, and these are 2 foot, 2 foot by 4 foot sections, which is just about the size to dedicate one whole flat to it. This is a standard flat. Now, we planted these on Monday, so nothing has germinated yet, but you can see this is kind of my, I don't know how well this is translating with just an iMac camera, but you see these bad boys are all in there. I'll be getting some water tomorrow because I can see their color is lighting up. And of course, you water these from the bottom and let it soak up. But the grow room situation is nice. When these actually get started growing, I've got a ratcheting carabiner system here. Let's see if I can do it with one hand. Did you hear that?
Look at that.
And then they just pull right on up. So you keep this right on top of the leaves when they're growing. So they get that 100% UV radiation. I'll lower that down later. It's not going to kill them for a day. Any questions from you while I'm in here?
I was gonna say, so like that was the first thing I noticed is those are like literally on almost the soil.
Yes.
So that's what you're targeting. Okay.
Absolutely. You want to right on top, touching even is fine. These stay cool as far as, you know, I'm touching this T5 light that's been running now for 11 hours and my hand is just fine. If you had a really dry plant, touching it and you forgot to turn the light off one night, it was going for a day and a half. Yeah, you get some brown leaves, but you wouldn't be killing the plant or starting a fire. But yeah, you want that light right up on top. And you know, this isn't where I started from. I have some of my original lights down here. In fact, I recently, I just got another one of these 2x4s. That's the one that I opened up in my video, and it was replacing several 1 tubes. Put some stuff on top of this. Oh, that I don't want to break. That's glass. Give us a dad joke while we wait, Jason.
On the spot dad jokes, I'm actually not very good.
That was a great joke. Okay, so this is this is a single tube. This is my very first one. You can see there's one T5 in here, and it's a single stage. I can't think of the right word right now. But this also had a green stand. So it was a kit that my sister-in-law got me to start many years ago. And you know, I put plans underneath that, and then I had like a raising and lowering system, and then just one light. And it worked well. And I've repurposed it since, you know, for a couple of years. I had several of them kind of chained together, and they definitely serve their purpose. Underneath that one, I think I had some pots of basil and rosemary and just these single things that I needed a weird size for. They're really good to fit in to my uniform spots here and fill in the spaces. So they're still going to be used probably later in the season for me right now, but that was a good thing to get started and to learn on. So I do recommend them.
Yeah,
All
those
right.
are normal. Okay, so those are normal daylight light bulbs, right? Because I'm used to seeing like always the pink grow light.
Not the kind of thing that I use.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you're
Is
talking
there-
about, especially when you look at them online. You see these pinks and purples, And to tell you the truth, I just don't know much about that because I got started with my T5s, and I'm a fan of once you get started with one thing and it works for you, keep doing just that. So you don't have 3 or 4 different systems that you need to manage. So
are those even technically grow lights, or are those literally just light bulbs?
oh no, these are T5 grow lights. They're marketed as grow lights.
Okay.
So like you don't want to. My grandpa, when I was first starting seed starting, he told me to get like a great big shop light and put the plants under there, and I'm sure that would have worked in some way. I mean, it is light. I suppose this would be a good experiment to do, but he was talking like those big old T8s like you'd have in the shop, the big old incandescents. And to my knowledge, that is not what you want to be doing.
Okay. All right. So the next natural question I think would be, when do you do this?
Oh man, I'll be right back. I got a chart.
Oh, you love charts. You know where you can find charts? On Google, where you can literally find all of the information available to you on this earth. I wish people used it more, but I didn't set up a big enough soapbox. I didn't realize how far away this chart was that I was going to have to keep talking about this the whole time.
Well, this is kind of embarrassing. I had a chart, and I'm not entirely certain where it went, but I'll find it. So what I do is, knowing what I want for seeds, I always read the packets, or I know things in my mind, and oftentimes they'll tell you to start X amount of days or weeks before the end of your average last frost date. Now, in Oshkosh, we're in USDA cold hardiness zone 5A, and our average last frost date is April 30th. So there's the date that I backdate everything from. So this first wave here was mostly my brassicas. So I started, oh God, I think 24 cabbages, a dozen Brussels sprouts, and then I also sprouted some ground cherries. Those are going to grow inside for the next 5 or 6 weeks. I'm going to put them out, I think, 2 weeks before my average last frost date, because my soil is ready to go. And they're very much cold tolerant. They did stupendously last year, and it is immensely satisfying getting something green and growing in the ground in the middle of April. But then my next wave, I think next week I'm getting, is it next week? Next week I'm getting some herbs in. 2 weeks after that, I'm starting, I think, tomatoes. No, tomatoes might be the middle of April. Anyways, it's all waves based off of when they're supposed to go. And like those tomatoes, I know I want to put in 2 weeks after my average last frost date, because that's going to be when I can reliably make sure that the temperatures are above 50 degrees every day and they're not going to drop below freezing. Because tomatoes just will not like that. And same with my squash. I made the mistake of starting those and putting them out too early last year. I'm going to probably put those out the second week of May, just so I can avoid that situation. So when I know what date I want them out, I just backdate in for how big I want them to be, how early I need to start them.
Okay.
So I have 4 waves before the
So you go germination cycle back from average last frost date.
Mm-hmm. Or when I want to plant it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thanks. I'm glad it made sense to someone. And of course, not all seeds are started indoors, like we talked about last week. Carrots, beets, radishes, those will all be outdoors.
Yeah, and that was maybe going to be so you have the seeds that you start indoors, and then actually before we go there, I want to walk backwards. So you mentioned you water those in those trays from underneath, and how often?
That is a visual marker for me. So we're using seed starting mix, which is a sterile mix. It's not potting soil. It's not soil from the garden. It's a sterile mix. And it's naturally a pretty medium light brown. And when it's wet, it turns a very visible dark brown. So I go down there and I check it twice a day, in the morning when I get its lights turned on and the evening when it's turned off. And I just look for it to be mostly almost back to that light brown. And then I water it from the bottom, let that fill up. And I don't drain them then. I just don't put in too much water. It's one of these things you just kind of learn to find a balance. And every 2 weeks until they're out, once every 2 weeks, I'll do a little bit of fertilizing. just to give them a rounded balance of nutrients, since they're not getting anything from the sterile soil and there's, nothing for them to be fed. You don't want to overfert, but you do need to give them some food.
Is there, on such a small scale, is there a way to even like determine the amount of fertilizer that you're using, or is it just like a sprinkle?
Yeah, it's about a tablespoon per one. I don't know. Let's call it a gallon that I'm using to fill, and it's a good ratio that was listed on the back of the fertilizer that I have, and it's worked for me in the past, so I just stick with it.
Okay.
Yeah, it just pays to get something that has decent instructions on it.
For sure. So then getting into planting outside, when are you doing that, and does that process look different in terms of when and how you water something that you're putting in the ground under less control that you have inside?
Oh, sure. Well, before you plant them directly in the ground outside in a couple of weeks, you have to go through a process known as hardening off. And we're going to be taking these flats up, and over the course of a week, I'm going to be laying them out on my back step for greater intervals of time, just maybe 4 hours the first day, then 6, then 8. They need to get used, these plants that have grown up in the middle of nowhere, very sheltered, they're not used to wind, so they have to get used to wind. They have to get used to the indirect sunlight. And they'll still be being watered by me at that point. But then once I plant them into the ground as seedlings, I will do probably watering every single morning before the heat of the day for a solid week. And then in my growing situation, they'll be established and fine. And from there, I don't water for the rest of the season unless we're having a pretty bad heat wave and they're looking, sagging. Then I'll water them in the morning while the dew is still out. Otherwise, I've got this autopilot garden set up and I just rely on the rain. But the seeds that I'm starting out there directly, they do require more attention than the seedlings too. I'll put them in there and they will get a watering every single day for 2 weeks at least until they get well established. The nice thing about the spring is we do get those springtime rains. So they tend not to struggle in our area. The worst case situation could be if we got a major deluge, in May. And if you don't have raised beds or you've got poorly draining soil, you can have this like stagnant pool of water sitting on top of your seeds, or bringing your seeds up and, running them down a stream. That's happened to me before from experience, unfortunately. But once they get established for a couple of weeks, the rain will take care of them unless you're in a drought.
Okay, that's probably something we haven't done.
Was that?
I was going to say that's probably something we haven't done correctly, is we probably still consistently water the established plants as well. And so that's not something that you're typically doing.
Well, that's not something I'm doing because it's not the system that I have set up. In my raised beds, I've got like rotting logs and things in the middle of them that the roots grow towards, wrap around, and that helps have this kind of equal moisture situation throughout the whole year. So it's a little different than just, I guess, not. And I don't know what your soil is. Are you doing clay? Do you have sand? Do you have some sort of loam? The consistency of your soil will also mitigate how often you should be watering. And there are some people who swear by drip irrigation, and I totally get it. Every soil situation is different. But the spiel that I've got going, I purposefully didn't want to run any kind of irrigation and have to worry about watering. And that's why I ended up doing a modified Hügelkultur bed.
That's good to hear too, because that's something in lawn care where there's established turf grass needs an inch of water a week, and you do that deep and infrequent. So you water, like, if you irrigation quite often is set up incorrectly. People believe because they have an irrigation system, you water for like 15 minutes with your irrigation, and you do that every day, and that's why you got it, so you can water every day. And that's actually really, really bad for your turf grass, because you're keeping all the water at the surface. You're keeping the surface always wet, so the roots don't chase down for water. Essentially what you want to do with turf is you want to get the roots to chase down for water. And you also want to you don't want to keep it wet, because then is when you have disease issues. And I don't know why. And so I don't even hold to the 1 inch thing. I track rainfall, and then just watch. So to kind of what you said, where you're to where you said you're just watching for the leaves to wilt, and if you start to see the impact of drought stress you water, that's what I'm doing. So essentially turf will start to turn like a you almost describe it as like blue. It will start to turn kind of like a gray blue before it goes dormant brown. And so usually I'm just watching for that like gray blue turn, and then I'll water only if I have to.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. That brings up a couple questions for me. I think of root depth. You're talking about getting it to grow down and establish it into the soil. That just makes me think of it. Grass in general is the single most cultivated crop in the United States.
I don't actually think that's factually accurate.
I do think that's factually accurate. Let's look it up, or let's look it up for the next one and have a debate about it. Because I keep hearing this, that it's the single most cultivated crop in the United States.
So I saw that there's a meme that circulates, and it says there's 40 million acres of grass. It doesn't specify whether it's turf grass and lawns, or if that includes like every highway median and all of, I don't know what that includes, but it says it's 40 million in turf. And then it says it is, and then the claim is that it is the most irrigated crop in the country, which basically what the study was asserting is that if all 40 million acres of turf grass was irrigated, that would be more than the top 8 farming crops in terms of being irrigated. What that leaves out is corn alone. I think I was able to find is something like 80 million acres, but only 20 million of that is confirmed as irrigated. So they're basically saying that they're making an assumption that 100% of all grass in the country is irrigated, which is demonstrably false. And then that they're leaving out completely the volume of corn crop, which was like 80 million acres or something. But because it wasn't irrigated, they says it's less.
So here we've got a study published by NASA, and I'm reading it. The source is michiganfarmnews.com. Is there anything I can send you this? Okay, so anybody who's watched this far, we're going to post this link in the description below. You can do some reading here too. I'll read up on this after the fact, because they do attest that turf grass is the single most irrigated crop in the United States, next down, 3 times more than corn. So I'm going to read more than just the headline, and we're going to talk about that in the future. So we'll put a peg in this. But what it also makes me think of with these roots chasing down is, what do you think about, instead of a monoculture lawn, something that has more than one variety, so you can get different layers of roots, different depths of roots, for times of drought, times of flood, or just a healthy biosphere of grasses and the pollinators and other critters that live in that space? Are you a monoculture kind of guy? What do you think? Because I've got a certain kind of seed mix that I want to talk about next.
Yes. So there's actually, I think a lot of the dissent that comes around turf grass is the like Scott's lawn type program.
Good.
Because basically Scott's has done an incredibly good job of marketing their product to people that
4-step, right?
That just want to, that just want to go to the store, grab the bag that is available at the store, take it home, throw it down. So what you end up with is they haven't looked at how much that fertilizer is supposed to cover. So you go to the store, you see the store has a 40-pound bag of fertilizer, you take it home to your lawn and you put that 40-pound bag of fertilizer on your lawn. Well, that 40-pound bag was supposed to cover 15,000 square feet. And the lawn you put it on is 3, 4, 5,000 square feet. If you have like a small, kind of tight urban lawn, it's probably about 5,000 square feet. So now you've way over applied, and that's when you get nutrient leaching and you get all of these things. Plus, none of the Scott's products, nobody ever soil tests, so you're not tailoring what you're putting down to what your soil actually needs. So once you get a little bit more seriously into lawn care, a lot of people start to talk about soil health and focusing on that more than a fertility program. So
that's great. That's good to know. I never would have guessed that, because I also agree in soil health. We talk about that for sustainable agriculture and gardening. And I guess I assumed that lawn care dudes were all just about fert, and not thinking about this health of the soil. So thank you for dispelling that myth for me personally here. Please continue talking about this. I just had to
Yeah. So
interject.
you have, so within YouTube, you have the lawn care nut, Alan Hain, who is like the pioneer of lawn care YouTube. He's the biggest channel. He's got now a distribution business, a ton of content. His, you know, for more the memes was like throw her down, hope for the best. And which is kind of fun and is kind of the mantra, but a lot of, so there's a lot of channels, but some of the biggest ones are a channel called Longcology, which is run by John Perry, who owns and operates a fertilizer company. And then there is also the Grass Factor, which is Matt Martin, also an owner of a fertilizer company, but both agronomists and both, you know, a lot of understanding of soil. And so Longcology specifically actually did a soil series, and one of the videos was talking about weeds and how he doesn't. Eventually, the goal is you in a well-maintained lawn, you'll never need a herbicide because a weed will never grow. It can't. So to your point, and you kind of broke up, but I think you were talking about a mixture of grass and weeds and creeping Charlie and dandelions and, you know, a culturally diverse yard, I think is what you brought up.
Yeah, you can nix the Charlie, but yeah, yes, in general.
And so what he talked about is weeds serve a purpose in unhealthy soil.
Yes.
So you have dandelions and other taproot type weeds, which are going to deal with and correct soil compaction issues. So you have a dandelion with a very deep taproot that is going to dig itself and bury itself deep in the soil and provide a path for water and nutrients to follow that root down into the soil. And then you have things like clover and creeping Charlie that are vining and spreading, which are going to grow out and help protect exposed soil from bare dirt from the sun and getting cooked, basically protecting the microbial activity within the soil by providing shade. So all those weeds will creep up because of issues that you have with a turf grass lawn. So if you have, like my front yard, what I reseeded in the summer of 2019, which is not a mono stand of Kentucky bluegrass, but it's three different varieties of Kentucky bluegrass. So to the layman, that's mono stand, but to the purist, it's not. That is so thick and healthy and has been put into soil and managed properly. And I'm doing soil testing to refine where that is. I think I sprayed like 3 weeds last year in that section. And I could have just pulled them, but I already had the herbicide mixed up for the less healthy parts of my yard that I was getting to, because you will need to do it at least probably once or twice. Like if you have a weedy lawn that you want to turn into a mono stand of turf grass, you're going to have to kill the weeds off just because the established weeds are going to outcompete your grass. So you do need to get rid of them once. But once it's established, if it's well managed, you shouldn't have to. Fertilizer rates go down as the soil health improves and the roots drive deeper. Water usage and needs goes down. As the soil starts to work better together, you get the pH in the right place, you get all the micronutrients and everything where it's supposed to be. Nutrient need is lower, so your inputs go down. So the goal, and I think farming is moving in this direction too, because I have a couple friends on Facebook that talk about like soil health for farming. And I think they're starting to figure it out too, is that the healthier you get the soil, the less you need everything. And I think the at least the YouTube community and people taking it seriously there are trying to get there as well.
So this is this kind of dovetails into having a cover crop and growing that layer of humus again for the agricultural lands as well.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, rather than tilling and leaving bare dirt to cook after you harvest, to allow there to be some ground cover and some natural activity to help that soil live.
My wife will want you to help me as the year rolls on to get rid of some of our creeping Charlie. So I think there's going to be some content of Jason Cyberlick on the Midwest Workshop and Garden channel as the year rolls along. Doesn't
That'd
that
be
sound
perfect.
Like fun? That sounds like fun.
Yes.
Well, while we're still on the topic of covering of a lawn, this has been in my thought sphere since last year. I have a friend in Minnesota who is either tinkering with this or is going to do it, or he already did, I forget. But we're talking about flowering bee lawns. And there's a toolkit for land managers here from the University of Minnesota. Agriculture, Parks and Recreation Board. What is this? And the Bee Lab, Environmental Trust Fund, Turf Grass Science. It's got all sorts of stuff. It's a 14 pager. And the TLDR of it is there are these great seed mixes that can provide a turf covering, if you consider, you can think of it as a lawn replacement, or a small area if you want to reclaim it for some natural grass. But it's short. You can walk on it if you want. It's not going to grow tall wildflowers, but it's a healthy mix of ground cover that's just not grass and great for pollinators. What do you think of that kind of stuff?
I have no problem with that. That's not for me personally. I don't prefer that. And I have a video on my channel actually talking about the unexpected benefits of of like, obviously if you get into lawn care, you do it because you want that like green lawn that's on the picture in the fertilizer bag and on, you know, the True Green website's homepage. You want that lawn, but
on the quad campus or whatever. Yeah, that's perfect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what I've found is, although that's nice, that is actually the thing I'm least appreciative of. So when we moved into this house, it was a lot of the backyard was pretty much just Creeping Charlie. And if you look, I have some videos where I go to, there's a tree line that I stopped treating because all the buckthorn had taken over, so that shade and grass won't grow very well anyway. So I have a line where my managed lawn stops and my like Creeping Charlie lawn starts.
Okay.
And so that's what it all used to look like, is that Creeping Charlie. And the yard did not drain. Like if it rained, it was a week before we were able to get back out there. It was just a mud pit.
Okay.
And
that's because of the unhealthy soil, right?
Yes.
Enough root, it wasn't drainage enough.
Yep. And now that's not an issue anymore. It can rain and we're out on it the next day and it's fine. It's very, very soft. And that's not to say that, you know, some other mix wouldn't also be soft if healthy, but like it's so soft. Like I'd never really had, I've only really started doing this since like 2019. So I've never really had this type of lawn before. And it is astonishingly soft. And then, yeah, so the drainage and softness were kind of the two things that I didn't expect that were the biggest things for me. Also, I've become a little bit more handy. I've taken care of my own equipment, and that's kind of helped me learn how to do things. But to your actual question, I have no problem with that. I mean, you go out to any vacant field and nature will absolutely take care of itself. Like you don't need somebody to manage a space for it to be covered in foliage, right? It's going to be just fine. Yeah.
I've been writing down things about what we should talk about in the future. There's a parcel of land that I'm trying to acquire from my neighbor, which would extend our backyard. And there's a great big black walnut tree, and it's beautiful. And I would never cut it down unless there was a terrible storm and it got damaged. But under black walnut, you have a great difficulty getting things to grow. Have you encountered situations like that for our viewers or listeners who maybe have a problematic tannin spot and they are just not able to get any kind of grass or anything growing underneath it?
Yeah. So actually, kind of funny. I saw something today from I've been doing research on golf course maintenance, and there was an article. I didn't read it, but the title was just in a battle between turf grass and trees will always win.
Yeah. Well, they're bigger, right? They got bigger roots. They have a crown. Yeah.
Yep. So from, you know, I don't know. I think Creeping Charlie does fairly good in shade. Like I said, that's almost exclusively what was in that back area. That was all shade covered. And like, I think Plantain does pretty well in those types of areas, because I had a shady area that was almost exclusively like Plantain that I had to deal with. But a lot of what gets talked about is, you know, there are places that aren't meant to grow grass, and those places should be landscaping. If you want to mulch and put in, you know, shade flowers and shade landscape around it to make it prettier, or if you want to allow whatever natural, but whatever plant is willing to grow there, and just let it grow there, because grass will not.
That's really important to know, because I think plenty of people would just default to, my lawn has to be all grass, you know, square lines, without taking into consideration shade lines, drip lines, anything like that. And having a nice landscape shaded section, as that curvature to a lawn, it's really smart to consider. I know a lot of my neighbors could benefit from that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a great proponent of this because I currently have exactly zero landscaping because all we've done since we've moved in is rip out what existed. But that was because it was hopelessly bad. The plan is to put stuff back, but a lot of people will talk about what's the point of a green lawn if you're not accenting it with color. So
And I definitely agree with that. Coming from the plant flowers, plant vegetables, plant things that you'll use, there is room enough in the world for all of it, right?
yes,
And I think that is a very peaceful way to end this week, don't you?
for sure.
I love that. Well, actually, no, that's not a good spot to end because you had homework last week.
I
You
did.
remember what your 2 assignments were?
I did. I'm only successful on 50%. So
All right, let's hear it.
so I did look up the smell of freshly cut grass, and that is a stress response from the grass plant.
Okay.
So it is a natural response from the grass plant, and it is, I don't know if it's a pheromone or what it's releasing, but the aroma is designed to attract animals and predatory insects that will come and eat whatever is eating the grass plant.
So we love the smell of pain and
Yes.
torment. Oh, that's
Yes.
at its finest.
But the interesting thing and why we like it is crop plants like vegetables will release a similar aroma when they are ready for harvest.
Okay, sure.
So we're drawn to that type of smell because it is
Food.
depending on what your belief system, either evolutionarily or by design, what we're drawn to know like food.
Yes.
So
Well, that's terrific. That's good to know. So thank you for doing that research, coming back to us with it. And I think we said offline that every time you've gone online to check out seeds, it's been an order delay situation, or we're not taking more orders today.
yeah, so the one specifically that you mentioned last week, basically
orders.
every day is
Yeah.
has reached the daily quota whenever I remember to look. And also I think it said there's like a 6 to 8 week lead time right now. So we will probably remain the basic birches, if you will,
Go
and
to
just keep
Costco.
going
Get some
yep,
seed. It'll be fine.
Costco or Home Depot or wherever, and just get it for this year. And we'll try again, be a little bit more proactive next year and do something a little bit more different, fun, sustainable, etc.
Well, you're still going to do a good job with the seeds you get now. Don't ever feel bad that you got the whatever brand from whatever store. Just get the seeds and get growing. That's the important part.
Exactly. If it the so for one of the sorry, I'm going to try to make a brief segue there.
Good.
Is there is in audio engineering, there's a person I follow, and the thing that he's been the engineer and producer for Aerosmith and for like several other mainstream bands so he knows what he's talking about. And what he always says is beware of the experts that will tell you that there is only one specific way that this thing has to be done, and if you don't do it that way, it's going to fail. And I think there's value in that, to the point that you made, like, hey, if that's what you have access to, just use that. I use a kind of like boutique-y type of grass seed in my front yard that is because it exists because it's been the best in trials. But if all you want to do is grab some sod from the corner where there's a pallet of sod, do that. If you have seeds from Home Depot, grow those. If you have, whatever. So
That's right.
Sorry, that was the aside.
No, that's good. Hey, there can be room for everything. Like the comment I made in my first video is, even Monsanto has its place, GMOs and things. So,
yep.
All right, for next week, both of our homework is going to be to read the 2 articles that we have linked down below for the crop usage, the biggest crop being grass. We can talk about the details of that. Mm-hmm. And then let's both read up about this bee mix, just because it's only 14 pages and I'm interested. And I know you like to read to learn.
Yes.
And anything else that we should do for homework?
No, I don't think so. Just continue to try to deal with seasonal depression until spring gets here.
That's right. We had a little bit of sleet here today. Be sure to, in the meantime, anybody listening, check out Jason's latest content, my latest content, because we're getting going on our springtime projects in the yard and otherwise. And head on over to Jason's channel and subscribe. Links are everywhere, right? All right. I think that's good. Let's say goodbye.
Absolutely. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Love you. I mean, not you, just my viewers. I love you too, Jason.